I'm Steve Runner.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? A new episode of Fidippidations is out and about. Episode 279, part 2 of my For Love of Wine and Pizza episode. And you have been warned. Really not much to talk about today, except I wanted to relate to you something a little interesting that happened last night. When I was growing up, my dad had this reel-to-reel tape deck, a tape recorder. Remember reel-to-reel? You know, audio tape that came on these big 7-inch reels. He had one of those. My uncle, his brother, my Uncle Jimmy, I think, gave it to him. My Uncle Jimmy has always been kind of a tinkerer. He worked for IBM for many years, and it was always great to go over to my Uncle Jimmy's house because he could rebuild anything. He had one of the first computers. He and I had a Commodore. What was the one before Commodore 64? That was my upgrade, the Commodore 64. But whatever was before that, I think it was another Commodore. I just can't remember. We were the first people in our family, certainly, but probably in the neighborhoods who had a computer. And anyhow, my uncle gave my dad this reel-to-reel tape recorder, which was, at the time, in the early 1960s, it was fairly high fidelity. And my dad's a huge fan of Celtic music, so he would have these audio tapes of all the Celtic music. And before my dad was into listening to music like that, or using a tape deck to listen to music, my great-grandfather, who I've talked about quite a lot, and Giovanni Antonio Frioli, had a reel-to-reel deck, and he used to listen to Italian music, because I guess there weren't radio stations that played a lot of Italian music. So Sunday night dinners at my great-grandparents' house, actually it was Sunday day, it was an all-day thing. You'd go to church, you'd go to Ma and Pa's, dinner all day, usually like a 5, 6, 7-course meal. Yeah. And it always had Italian music playing in the background, and all the my great grand-aunts and grand-uncles and grandparents would all, by the end of the night, after a little grappa, and of course Chianti being poured liberally, they would sing these sweet old Italian songs. And so I've got this tape deck that my dad. I said, I've got these audio tapes that my dad recorded back when I was just a wee tot. In fact, I pulled one of the tapes out yesterday from 1966. So I was 4 years old, and my sister Ellen would have been 3. And it's a recording made around Christmas time of my dad reading Christmas stories to us and asking us to talk to Santa, with our wish list. And really, my dad was trying to capture the moment in audio. And I remember growing up, through the years, every once in a while grabbing that tape and listening to it. It's been probably, 20 years since I last heard these tapes. And the fact that they still play is pretty crazy. But the problem was that this reel-to-reel tape deck, it's pretty old, right? I'd say it's close to 50 years old. And, the old expression, they don't make them like they used to? Well, they used to make them like this. And it's actually, it had some issues. I had to take it apart. There's this one pulley. It's more of a belt that is completely lost its rubber, and I think I can probably find a replacement. It won't be obviously for this piece of equipment, but if I can measure get the dimensions of this belt, I think I can find something. I hope so anyway. But it's sort of working a little bit. Interestingly enough, if you have a 7-inch reel, it doesn't work so well. But if you have a smaller reel, it seems to work okay. But anyhow, it's been, last night I got the thing to work, and it was kind of, wow, I got this thing fixed, sort of. I mean, not really, but I mean, at least I can, for the smaller reels, I can hear audio. And I'm listening to sounds recorded 45 years ago, 46 years ago. And I'm listening to the sound of my dad's voice, and he's a young guy. I mean, he had to have been in his early 30s, might even have been his late 20s. I don't know. I probably should do the math and I could figure it out. But it's so sweet hearing that. My dad's alive and well and doing great, as my mom is, But it's just weird hearing their voice and their youth. And really, it's funny because my dad has a much more pronounced Boston accent. Or maybe he always did, and I just, I hear it all the time, so I'm not aware of it. But it seems so much more pronounced in these audio. Obviously, his vocal cords have aged since 1966. But it's really cool to listen to this tape, and it just brings back such a flood of memories. I was 4 years old at the time, and I'm a ham when you put the microphone in front of me, and I wonder if really part of my life as a guy who loves technology and who's into creating media, I wonder if it was born out of those early sessions with this reel-to-reel tape deck. I can almost see it, because I remember spending a lot of time with that tape deck. In my teens, I used to make movies, Super 8 movies, and the soundtrack would be on this reel-to-reel tape deck. And then I started experimenting with recording music, and this tape deck has the ability to do sound on sound, which is taking two tracks recorded separately and playing them together. It's kind of like a mixer, except you have to synchronize it, so you can actually, you're hearing what was recorded on track one while you're talking, sound on sound. And that was such a wild technology for me at the time. And then you could do things like, it has two speeds, so you could record at one speed and play back at another and speed up or slow down your voice. This was high tech at the time, and it afforded me the ability through my early teens to play around with audio. And I went on to have a career in commercial broadcasting on the radio, behind the microphone as a DJ in my college years, and then at some of the #1 stations in the Boston market. And I really think, we're shaped by little events in our lives, little things that happen and make a mark in our lives. We're shaped by that. And I bet if you thought about it and went back in time, and you could probably find some little event that probably didn't seem like much at the time, but left such an impression of you. I remember, men walking on the moon and following the space program and just being fascinated by that, and knowing that I wanted to work with computers and engineering. I mean, I wanted to be an astronaut. and really, you laugh, but part of my adventure in running and these trips I take down the Allagash, and, later in my late 20s when I traveled around the world with this company called Media Touch Systems, it was an adventure. Same kind of adventure that, the guys who went to the moon must have had. But I think back to that tape deck, and I wonder if much of what I've become today is because of that little machine. And in a way, it's like meeting up with an old friend, to have this machine again and for it to actually work. Taking it apart, seeing the tubes. This is not a solid state device. This has tubes in it. It heats up. It hums. And there's something comforting in that warmth and that humming. I know. It's wacky. It's crazy. I mean, it's a thing, right? But sometimes things bring back fond memories. They had bad memories too, I suppose, but this brings back a lot of fond memories. And so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of these old tapes. Once I get the tape deck completely tuned right, if I can. It's not an easy thing to do. But I'd like to be able to give my parents and my brothers and sisters an audio tape on a CD from some of that audio. I think they'd get a kick out of it, and I think they would experience that same feeling of good nostalgia, good memories. All right, I just thought I'd share that with you. Even though I've sworn to myself I wouldn't use the term, I'm going to share something with you, I went ahead and did it. So, too bad. I'm sharing. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'm Steve Runner, reminding you to run long and tape.